We saw a big trade in the NBA go down on Sunday, December 29th, as the Brooklyn Nets sent Dorian Finney-Smith, a player who myself and Chip really like as a potential addition to the Sixers team, to the Los Angeles Lakers. So we liked him at that time, can no longer dream about a scenario in which he's a 76er. And in that trade, D'Angelo Russell getting traded from the Lakers to the Nets, and now he's expected to be bought out. So on today's show, could the Sixers pursue D'Angelo Russell? Also, the Sixers being linked to one free agent guard, and we'll talk about that player coming up here on the show as well. Before we do that, it is December 30th. Can you believe that tomorrow is New Year's Eve? Let's end this month with a straight-up bang. December sub-battle between 76ers now and Boston Celtics today. Two powerhouse channels here under the Chat Sports umbrella. We've picked up 254 subs this month. Celtics today at 293. Sixers got a huge dub over Boston on Christmas. Let's get a dub to round out this year. Hit that sub button for free and year-round coverage of the Philadelphia 76ers. So D'Angelo Russell expected to be a buyout candidate now after being traded to the Nets in that DFS deal. He's expected to be able to find a suitor and try to latch on with another team across the NBA, because him going to Brooklyn was really just salary filler, a player included in that trade just to make that trade happen. He's not going to play for the Nets once again. Here was that Lakers-Nets trade. Obviously, the headliners, Dorian Finney-Smith, D'Angelo Russell. The Lakers also receiving Sixers legend Shake Milton. And then the Nets also receiving Maxwell Lewis and 3 second-round picks. I've always called D'Angelo Russell a James Harden-light type of player. Very similar game, both lefties, both will dribble the air out of the basketball for a majority of the 24-second shot clock. Then they'll try to take a step-back three-pointer. They don't really do a lot as far as coming through in clutch moments, even though D'Angelo Russell has that ice in his veins type of celebration. Of course, Harden is a better player who does a much better job of getting his teammates involved, the rebounding the basketball. But from a scoring standpoint, that's why I call D'Lo kind of a James Harden light, just because of the similar game as far as how they put the biscuit in the basket. This year, 26.3 minutes per game for D'Angelo Russell, 12.5 points per, under 5 dimes, 41.5% from the field, 33.5% from long range. And his previous 4 years, last year had some solid moments, but then he'd have a good game, he'd have a really bad clunker, especially in some big moments. 18 points per game a season ago. He did shoot 41.5% from 3, but he always, to me, seems to be a good stats, bad team type of player who doesn't really do a lot to result in victories for the team that he's playing on. Now, why Philadelphia could make sense here. Sixers have a need after the Jared McCain injury. He said on TikTok, kind of being filmed by somebody else, not the TikTok where he was clearly drugged up on pain meds, that he's going to be out for the rest of the year. But because he's most likely going to be out for the rest of the year, you need to find his replacement. Sixers do have an open roster spot, and they have the money to sign D'Lo. Russell could play a big role if you want that heater scorer coming in off the bench, who's kind of that microwave type of guy. So, Chip, I'm out on D'Lo. Never been a huge fan. Where do you kind of stand on bringing him in to give this team some offensive scoring punch?
Yeah, so, D'Lo, there's a reason the Lakers and Lakers fans have been wanting him out of there for quite a while now. Despite the numbers he can put up and the games he can have, just very inconsistent on the offensive end of the floor and then not giving you a whole lot on the defensive end of the floor. I do think, if he's bought out, obviously he'd be signing for a minimum salary. And look, the Sixers, they've been playing better as of late, of course. I think 9 of their last 12 games they've won, and they're creeping back up towards 500. But if McCain is going to be out for the year, I think the Sixers do have a need at, backup guards, sort of a scoring punch off the bench. That's kind of the last thing I think could really complete this team and help them to, get their run towards a potential top 6 seed in the East. So look, if D'Lo is just sitting out there and he wants to go to a contender, and the Sixers had the money because there's all these rules, the apron, some teams can't sign him, the Sixers can.
Yeah.
I think it could make some sense. Now, there's other routes and avenues I'd like to explore before making that move, other trades you can make, things like that. But look, if it comes down to it, and the Sixers are sitting there, closer to the deadline when I think a move like this might actually end up happening, and they aren't able to swing a trade for a better player, and they need to upgrade that roster, and McCain is out for the season, I think I could get behind it. Again, as a signing, I wouldn't want him to start, of course, but someone that can come off the bench and just provide a little bit of a scoring punch because, again, we talk about so much in the show, your backup guards, Kyle Lowry, Reggie Jackson, Eric Gordon, who's been out with like a oral surgery that hasn't recovered well. Don't know what's going on with him. I think D'Lo can at least provide a little more than some of those guys could offensively. Lowry has been better as of late, started off strong, then cooled off a lot. But I think just adding another guy that can, at least put the ball in the basket from time to time, despite his inconsistencies. If you can get that 40% three-point shooter he was last year, as opposed to the 33% he is this year, I think it would make sense again, coming off the bench, just score some points, and wouldn't really cost you much because he's just sitting out there in free agency, and the Sixers do have an open roster spot.
Yeah, the numbers that he put up last year that you mentioned and that we talked about earlier, somewhat intriguing. I mean, more than 41% from three. I just think he's a hard player to kind of get involved within the offense. I think he needs the ball to be productive. Yes, he was playing alongside LeBron James and Anthony Davis, still putting up decent numbers, but it's kind of like empty numbers for me. So if he's bought out, should the Sixers sign D'Lo? S for sign, P for pass. As always, we want you to voice your opinions here on the show, so do that right now in the comments section. Coming up next, Sixers linked to a free agent guard who hails from the state of Pennsylvania, the Reading area. A lot of you are going to know that name. We'll talk about him coming up here just around the corner. But let's show you some 76ers hoodies. Look, I know that Christmas was last Wednesday and Hanukkah is starting to wrap up a little bit. That started on Wednesday too. It's never too late to get a holiday gift. Have you procrastinated with your holiday shopping? I have. Did you procrastinate with your homework? I did growing up. We all procrastinate from time to time. So if you want to get a Sixers hoodie right now, great deals available after that Christmas wave. That's why we're showing you these deals right now and these options, plenty of options, so that you can get swagged up, swagged out, or get a gift for somebody else. All you have to do, head to chatsports.com/76hoodies. We'll put that link attached to the pinned comment and in the show notes of today's 76ers Now. So this is pretty interesting here on the 76ers rumors front that Philadelphia's been linked to Lonnie Walker. This is a player who played in Reading, went to Miami, first-round pick by the San Antonio Spurs. He's had an interesting career because it's really been up and down. We've seen some good moments. We've seen some bad moments. We've seen him play. We've seen him get DNP'd. We saw him a couple of years ago for the Lakers have some fine moments in that playoff series against the Golden State Warriors. Right now, though, according to Mark Stein, drawing NBA interest can be bought out of his Zalgiris contract in the EuroLeague. So he's not even playing in the NBA right now. And I was thinking about him a little bit earlier, not playing in the NBA. That's weird. Maybe he just took a bag to play overseas in the EuroLeague. A player like Markelle Fultz, he can't even find a job right now. The fast fall of those two players, that was just coming to my mind a little bit earlier because I knew that we'd be talking about Lonnie Walker. Some potential suitors said to include the 76ers, Minnesota Timberwolves, Miami Heat, Denver Nuggets, and the Boston Celtics. He did go to camp with Boston last year with the Nets. This is a rotational player who can contribute to a team for at least 10 to 15 minutes per night. He's athletic. He can run the floor. The three-point stroke has improved 38.4% back last year. Year before that with the Lakers, averaged almost 12 points per game for a team that made it to the Western Conference Finals. And you thought that he was going to be able to use that as a launching pad for the rest of his career in 2022-2023 in that season with the Lakers. He was averaging 45% shooting, 36.5% from three. As you could see, the year before that with San Antonio, his final year there on his rookie contract, the number's not great from an efficiency standpoint. His EuroLeague stats, played 10 games so far, averaging 15 points per game. The three-point numbers up to 41.4%. So, Chip, you have that roster spot open that we were talking about a little bit earlier. A player who I think with more player development, if he puts in the work, and that's not me saying that I've heard anything about him not putting in the work, but Sixers have done a good job of developing some shooters. Nick Nurse has a track record of that. You have the open roster spot, and he's a pretty solid athlete, and there's some uncertainty moving forward for the Sixers team with those banged up players. So what do you think about Lonnie Walker here?
Yeah, another intriguing player to me. And, it's always been weird with his career, very up and down, and hasn't really been able to stick around since ending his time with San Antonio. Had some stints with the Lakers, obviously coming into camp with Boston. I think he's worthy of being on an NBA roster. I think he's shown enough to at least, you look at some of the bottom players on some of these rosters, I think he's worthy of being that 12th, 13th, 14th man at the very least. And so, him playing overseas, kind of refining his craft a little bit, he has that athletic ability that's so intriguing, right? He's never really been able to put it all together and use that to be, a bona fide scorer off the bench or tap into that on the defensive side of the ball. But look, when you're, comparing him to like D'Angelo Russell, obviously, Russell's someone that's going to need the ball and take a lot of shots to be productive. I think Lonnie Walker a little bit more can play off the ball, and while he can do some things creating on his own, going to be a lower maintenance guy. Maybe that's something the Sixers will be looking for more than someone like Russell, who is going to be demanding looks in the offense. And as Chase, you mentioned earlier, he's going to need to be schemed for and going to need to be drawn up for him to be effective. So again, he's just sitting out there playing overseas right now. A player that, look, if you can get, and we talk about a lot with some of these players, like you just don't know what you're going to get from guys like these that have been so inconsistent year in and year out. But similar to Russell, you need a guy that can come off the bench and score a little bit. If he can kind of tap into those good moments he has, again, basically winning that one game for the Lakers a couple years ago against the Warriors, like if he can get that scoring together, kind of a player in the mold of like a Karis LeVert, right, in Cleveland, who, we've seen can have some big games. He's had big games against the Sixers. That could be intriguing. Attacking the rim, using athleticism, and hitting that three. Again, a player that you could have for the minimum, wouldn't cost you any trade assets. And I think, different from Russell, like, you could still make a trade, a big-time trade, and then still bring in Lonnie Walker to kind of round out that rotation. So two guys there that got to be keeping your eye on as we get closer and closer to that trade deadline. He's going to obviously want to go to a contender and probably go to somewhere where he can have an opportunity to play. I think the Sixers offer both of that. And another name to keep an eye on here as we get closer to the Sixers, trying to make a move to rise in those Eastern Conference standings.
Yeah, and look, this is a Sixers team too, starting to play better basketball. It's exciting, and really glad that they were able to get that victory back on, what was that? My days are mixed up because I've been traveling. On Saturday against the Utah Jazz, that's a team that you got to beat. Tyrese Maxey was cooking, and I think Tyrese Maxey named last week the Eastern Conference Player of the Week, and so he started to find his confidence a little bit. You have Joel Embiid. He's healthy. He's playing well. You get Paul George in a little bit of a rhythm as that third element of that big three. Some of these other rotational players also starting to contribute a little bit. You make an addition here, you make an addition there, you continue to stay hot. The Sixers turnaround could happen, and it could be real. So we talked about two players on today's show, D'Angelo Russell, Lonnie Walker. If you were Daryl Morey and you could pick one to sign, who would you choose?